This video is going to depict the changing of the top and bottom gripper belts on the NSF. First thing you do is remove all make-ready plates and die holders. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to pull the entire pinch roller assembly out that allow us to get in here to work. First thing you have to do, you have to remove the springs underneath that hold the pinch roller in position. This view shows the pinch roller spring attached to the spring post. There's one on the non-operator side and one on the operator side. Remove your cam followers. Remove your backup spring, your spring finger assemblies. You loosen up your marble trays. And you remove the shoulder screw that attaches the bar that holds the pinch roller assembly in. Once you have all that completed, the pinch roller moves up and out. Okay, the foil bar assembly on the infeed side has to be removed. Okay, the outfeed foil roller assembly also has to be removed. Okay, for the purpose of this video, notice that the foil unit has been removed. Just gives us a better chance or a better vision of what's going on here. The stepper motors are loosened. Each one is held by 3 socket head bolts. They need to be loosened up. Tension in our drive belts. We have a phase adjust pulley. The phase adjust pulley is very important that it be adjusted properly for machine registration. All we're going to do in this exercise is loosen it up. That allows the position of the belt slack to be centralized. The head stop cam is removed next. The purpose of the head stop cam is to move the head stop fingers up and down, which stops the paper. After that's removed, you can continue to remove your drive belts. Your top infeed shaft assembly. This is something that's going to be loosened up but not totally removed from the machine unless it needs replaced. Bottom outfeed shaft also needs to be loosened up, and again, it won't be removed from the machine unless it needs to be replaced. Okay, the top gripper belt guide needs to be moved up. You'll loosen all 3 screws. Raised it all the way to the top, and we'll lock the two outside screws only for right now. That's all we need to lock up to hold it in position. After the top gripper belt guide is raised up, we'll go around the front of the machine. We have a couple guards to remove, and we'll get into the gripper belts then. On the outfeed end of the machine, we need to remove the rear impression guard. This holds the paper tray or the slow feed conveyor. It opens up to the impression mechanism inside. After we remove that, we're going to remove the bottom outfeed guard. This is a deflector guard for the paper. It covers the bottom outfeed shaft. Okay, the bottom outfeed shaft is contained on this end by a bracket. It's got to be perpendicular to the rear side frame and parallel to the mechanism. That means that the shaft has to track correctly. If the track of the shaft is off one way or the other, meaning if it's this way too far or this way too far, the belt will run off of the pulley. So it has to be perpendicular to the side frame. Okay, the top infeed shaft is attached in the same fashion as the bottom outfeed shaft. You just remove the screws. Again, it has to be perpendicular to the rear side frame when you adjust it back after you install your belts. Bracket comes loose. Okay, in order to remove the top gripper belt guide, we need to loosen and remove the center screw totally, and we're going to remove both end screws that hold the guide in the machine. They have large washers on them, thick washers, so they can be tight and be adjusted without damaging the screw or the washer. Okay, we're now going to remove the top gripper belt and the top gripper belt guide assembly. In order to get the room, you need to move the belt out of the way. We'll pull this top gripper belt guide assembly right out of this side of the machine, right out of the front. Remove the belt off the back pulley, the top outfeed pulley. Move it through the impression area and off the operator side of the shaft. When I removed the gripper belt from the shot on the other side of the machine, what you didn't see was me removing it from the top outfeed pulley. This is just pulled off the pulley and passed through the machine. Okay, we've successfully removed the top gripper belt and the gripper belt guide assembly. We're going to remove the bottom gripper belt here. It's going to include partial removal of the knurled roller, this plate, and maybe, depending on where, in the bottom gripper belt guide. First thing we're going to do is remove this plate. There are two screws under here. They're 1032 socket head cap screws. There's one towards the front edge of this and one towards the rear edge of this. They screw into the bottom gripper belt guide. All we're going to do is loosen them to facilitate the removal of this plate. And we're also going to remove the two button head screws that are out here. After loosening the button head screws out here in the front, these are 1032 button head screws, we're going to loosen and remove them out of the plate. There's a bracket on the bottom of this plate right here, this headstop plate. There's a bracket that bends down at a 90. And I've loosened the two socket head cap screws here. You just notice the plate is loose. We're going to remove this by lifting it up over the headstop and towards the outfeed end of the machine. remove the bottom gripper belt, we need to separate the knurled roller from the pulley. This is done with a tenon into a bore that's in the knurled roller. Loosen our set screws. Come over and pry the pulley and shaft away from the knurled roller. We slide the knurled roller towards the operator side. That creates a little space. In order to remove the belt. Once the space is made, the belt is removed thusly. Okay, the bottom belt, to continue removing it, we're going to pass this thing through the impression area. And all we have to do is slip it off the end of the shaft. And that's the complete removal of the bottom gripper belt. Okay, after removing the bottom gripper belt off the ends of the shaft, we have the bottom gripper belt guide in the machine. We've removed everything so we can actually see in here what's going on. The bottom gripper belt guide has a wood strip in it, as does the top gripper belt guide. They're both essential for putting pressure on the paper to transport the paper through the machine. The bottom gripper belt guide does not come out of the machine. It's set here at the factory to be parallel to the bottom weldment. And it doesn't come out of the machine unless it has to be repaired. What we're going to do now is we're going to start back and reassemble this. This is going to be the easy way to show you how to put the belt back in. You will slip it over your bottom outfeed shaft. That puts the belt back in position on the gripper belt guide. As you saw in the last shot, we installed the bottom gripper belt onto the guide and onto our pulley and on the back pulley. The next step is to insert the knurled roller and the pulley and the belt. It's also essential that after you have all this installed, that the knurled roller be tightened, and it's very important that there isn't any end play in the knurled roller. And there isn't any end play. Okay, then we can adjust the tension in the bottom gripper belt, and we also can install our head stop plate after we do that. Okay, the next step is going to be to install the top gripper belt and the top gripper belt guide. The top gripper belt guide must be clean, free of nicks, dirt, and our spring-loaded lubricated wood strip must be free. This is what generates pressure to move the sheet through the press. What we're going to put the belt through first. Get it in position. And our gripper belt guide. It's inserted like this. We're going to pull it over the back pulley. We're going to reinsert our screws. You reinsert your screws. We're going to use those to hold the top gripper belt guide up just a little bit in order to insert the belt underneath it. I'm just going to lock them down a little bit just to maintain the height on the belt. The top gripper belt then is inserted around your top pulley. Again, we're around the back side on our outfeed pulley, which we'll show you later. After installing the top gripper belt guide, we come around to the non-operator side of the machine. What we're going to do is we're going to install our bolts for our bottom outfeed shaft. We'll leave them loose. We'll be adjusting it later. We're going to install our bolts for our top infeed shaft. This does, it gives you a certain way of holding the belt. These are the adjustments as the belt moves in and out. They're also used for adjusting slack. Once that's completed, we will install the bolts on the other side of the shafts. Coming around to the operator side of the machine, we're going to install the button head screws into the bottom outfeed shaft. These we will also leave loose to allow us to adjust the bottom outfeed shaft. Okay. On the operator side, we're going to install our 1032 screws that hold the top infeed shaft. Again, we're going to leave these loose. We're just going to bring them up till they touch. So it'll allow for adjustment. Once we have that in position and the shaft is in position, we're going to go around to the non-operator side. We're just going to install our head stop cam on the machine to hold the head stop down out of our way to facilitate the installation of our head stop plate. The head stop plate goes in through the opening. Get over the bolts, and we're going to move to the other machine to show you how to tighten it up and adjust it. On the cutaway, we're just opening the machine up. We have the side frame removed to show the plate installed onto the bottom gripper belt guide. It's secured by two 1032 socket head screws down here. It's also adjustable. This has to be adjusted in position to the bottom gripper belt guide. Once the head stop plate is installed to the bottom gripper belt guide, there is an adjustment in it. What I'm going to use is a standard 6-inch scale. It's going to be the thickness of about 20 thousandths. The head stop plate has to be below the bottom gripper belt guide at about 20 thousandths. The paper will hang up on it if it's not below. This gives you a smooth transition into the impression area. We're just going to use this scale for height, and again, you're just going to go down after you have that set and go down here and tighten your two bolts. Okay, we're going to secure the head stop plate on the operator side with these two screws right here. They're just button head screws. Bring it up and we're going to tighten that up and secure it. There isn't an adjustment on this. These holes are drilled through the side frame and the position is engineered into the machine. I'm going to tension the top gripper belt and the bottom gripper belt, just the in-feed and the out-feed. The bracket has a little bit of play in it that allows you to give it a gap for the paper to enter. We're going to pull the tension out of it and adjust the belt. For the bottom outfeed, we will do the same. Tensions both belts through the machine. Cutaway machine is going to show a little easier of what we're accomplishing when we're talking about adjusting our gripper belts. The top gripper belt tension and the bottom gripper belt tension. When we move the top infeed shaft, this being the top infeed shaft, we do want a little bit of room for our paper to go through here without any hitches. We also want a little bit of room on the outfeed end for the same reason. You don't want any hitches or paper hanging. Top gripper belt guide is in elongated slots. And the height is adjusted through these slots. The adjustment is going to be just until the cog on the top gripper belt disappears. There'll be a clearance of between 40 and 50 thousandths between the two gripper belt guides. The clearance being right in here between the two metal guides. The final adjustment on the top infeed shaft is to make sure that it is perpendicular to the side frame. This is accomplished after the tension is brought into the belt by the operator side adjustment. Pick a sight line with your head stop or your narrow roller. You can pick a sight line, pull it into position, and lock your two screws, one here and one here. Bottom outfeed shaft also has to be perpendicular to the side frame. What I do is enter in through the impression area and pick up the bottom shaft in the machine. Pull it back into position and tighten the button head screws. These button head screws should remain here. This keeps the paper from hanging on a socket head screw that sticks out. Button heads make the transition through the machine a little easier. Then we're going to install our rear guard. Rear guard is just installed in this fashion. A couple of button head screws. Once these are tight, you can grab the square shaft right here with a 1/2 inch wrench to give you play here. There should be a little rattle with this movement that assures that the shaft isn't rubbing against the plate and the plate also isn't too high. Once all that's accomplished, we can put this back up in position and lock it down with the finger screws. In an earlier operation, we install our head stop cam. We're going to remove that to facilitate the installation of our drive belt. On the head stop cam, there's a 1/4 inch hole in the cam, and in our pinch roller cam, right in this area, there's a 1/2 moon. Those are timing marks. When this goes back together, we will line those timing marks up. We're going to install our belt. Make sure everything is free. Make sure that our gripper belts are running free and clear. We're going to reinstall our head stop cam. Line up our timing holes and lock our set screws in a radial groove. The radial groove allows for tweaking and adjustment. That completed, we're going to move back and adjust our stepper motor. Stepper motors are installed into an elongated slot to facilitate adjustment of our drive belts. You need these drive belts to be tensioned. You don't want to over tighten them and spring them. They need tightened up. Check the tension on the belts. This motor tightens two belts up. I found that this is the easiest way to do this. Once you think you have it in position, you want to check your belts. There's 4 sides to this. You want to have the proper tension in all your bolts. The phase adjust pulley is the last step in this operation. What the phase adjust pulley does is keep the tension on this belt and this belt equal on all 4 sides. It's very important that the phase adjust be tightened in a proper fashion. It's also located in a radial groove. There are 2 set screws, and I suggest you Loctite these in position when you're completed. After they're tight, we will double check and make sure that we have the same amount of slack in the belts here and the same amount of slack in the belts here. All 4 sides have to be equal. The transport paper and essential for registration. In the final stages of the gripper belt change, we will reinstall everything that we removed previously. Our pinch roller assembly installs in the same fashion that it was removed. Remove our bolt. We'll line our holes back up. This bolt is to lock that in. Locks your shaft in for your pinch roller, and it also gives a guide for your side jog assembly. Make sure this doesn't have a bind in it. We'll install our cam followers. Run on the pinch roller and the cam lifts the pinch roller up and down. It's important that the flats on the cam followers, your set screw does contact the flat. We're tight, we'll reinstall our backup spring, our head stop fingers, and retighten our marble trays. After we're finished with that, we'll take a spring hook, wiggle down, and reinstall the springs on the pinch roller. This view shows the pinch roller spring attached to the spring post. There's one on the non-operator side and one on the operator side. Next step is to install our foil guide bar. It has elongated slots, as you see, for adjustment for height. Put them in. We just have the 4 screws that hold them in. They're just a standard 1032 screw. We'll install them and leave them just a little bit loose to facilitate the adjustment on the height. It's also very important that once it's installed, that the foil roller moves. What I have here is a couple washers. This is just a quick, easy way of adjusting the proper height. These washers are 100 thousandths thick. Put them in there and we'll adjust these. Tighten up the screws. When we pull out our washers, we will make sure that the foil bar runs freely in the bearings. Final step in the gripper belt replacement procedure is to install the bottom foil guide. It installs through 2 holes in the non-operator side here and here, and 2 holes on the operator side. This bar contains 2 plates one on each end that have elongated slots for adjustment. This installs in this fashion, held in by 4 1032 socket head cap screws. The elongated slots that I just showed you are for height adjustment to adjust the foil bar. Once these are all in position, we'll adjust the height. The best starting position to adjust the height is with the elongated slot visible just at the top of the flat washer. You adjust it. You see the slot in this position right here? We'll slide that down just until it's visible and lock the screw. We'll do the same thing on the operator side. That guarantees that the foil bar is straight through the machine and in alignment with the front foil bar. That concludes the gripper belt installation procedure.